Thank you for tuning into Old Dog, New Tricks, a series about passions, pastimes, hobbies, anything you set aside time for in your daily life. I'm Justin, the aforementioned Old Dog, and on today's episode, we're talking to a very beautiful lady about art and drawing. My wife is on, Aliea, and it is just a treat of an episode. We just sat down and recorded and had a little sappy moment and talked about just life in general as it pertains to getting out and being creative. So thank you for listening, and let's get started. What do you think?
Hello, what? Good.
We didn't, I guess, you got your art book with you.
Yeah, just in case I needed some inspiration.
We should have been doing art while we're talking about this.
It's not too late.
I guess. But then are we focused on the conversation or just on the art, you know?
I could see it ebb and flowing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I'm sitting down with my wife.
Hello.
My beautiful wife, Aliea. And she, for the last, as long as I've known her, has always been an incredible artist. And when we were dating, was in art classes and always drawing, painting, designing, always doing all sorts of stuff. And I think you bring a lot of that to our daily life, even in design and different rooms. You're always creating something, you know. I think you've painted our whole house different colors. You've created artwork for the walls. I mean, it's just been a journey, and you still go to this day. You're always doing something. In fact, this is the lady who put together the artwork for Old Dog, New Tricks. She's a great designer, and I'm very, very proud every time she does something. She always makes beautiful things. So I just want to talk about your artwork. I don't know if that was a good intro or not.
No, thanks, honey. That was sweet.
But I want to talk about your art.
Yeah.
And where it came from. And how you do it, mostly. A lot of our date days have been, we sit down and we do art. And I like to watercolor. I think it's just something that I find enjoyable. And I'm not very good at it, but I still do it because it's just creative. It's fun. But you, when we're sitting down next to each other, it's just like, I don't like looking over because it's like, how do you do it that fast? How do you get those colors to look like that? How do you mix it so well? So I got to let you talk, but this is just my view. Having a guest like you is like, I have so much insight on this because I love watching you work.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
I don't know.
When did you start art? What was the first time you felt like I'm not just very good at this, but like I want to do this?
I never really felt like I was good at art until I was much older and I started taking college classes. And I think before then, it was always something I enjoyed and tried to do, but I didn't feel very accomplished in it. And I think I did need some of that technical boost in order to realize I do have like somewhat of a talent here. This is more of a natural ability for me, but there's always room to grow. And learning foundations and techniques and basics and shading and color theory really helped me be able to take that next step.
Yeah.
But because before then, you don't necessarily know all those things starting off. And although I had taken art classes before, in elementary school and middle school, I didn't have that base to feel like I was good at it.
Yeah. Yeah. Was your art in elementary school and middle school, was it still above par? I assume it was. Like, noticeably, were you better than most people that you were doing art with?
I think it depends. I always had a good friend who's still my friend today. Her name's Emma, and she, I feel like, has always been the world's best artist. Like, I remember in like 5th grade, She painted me this picture that I still have somewhere of like a lady in a ball gown dress. And I just thought it was the most beautiful picture in the whole world. So I think I struggle with a lot of self-comparison in that way, where there would be maybe one other person in the class who was, in my eyes, better than I was. And so I struggled with that a little bit, especially when I was younger. Just that comparison and thinking I was worse because I wasn't at the skill level as those other people. But come to find out, again, in my later years, that they had art classes at a younger age.
Yeah.
So that was things that they were doing regularly.
Right. And I think that happens a lot, especially with the internet these days.
Right.
There's always somebody better
Right.
than anything you're doing. What mindset do you have to be in to continue you continued art and you still do it to this day, even though there is people better than you? What do you do to tackle that feeling of being lesser?
I think, well, one, I've just become to a more mature spot of not wanting to compare. And also with creating as much as I do, I can appreciate how much time and effort went into people who are literally masters of their craft. And acknowledging the fact that I'm not there. Yeah. I don't do this 40 hours a week right. for good reason.
We don't have a studio in this house.
Right. Yeah. And you and I are in a very similar spot right now where the time to do our hobby, we have to be really intentional about it. Mm-hmm. And we understand that it's just a short amount of time mm-hmm. that we will have to pause on our hobbies and the things that we want to set time aside for, because we're both working, because we got the 2 little boys. So I'm not allowing myself to be held back by that anymore, because I understand that this is the stage of life that I'm in. And the fact that I can still find moments to create a piece, even if it's just once a month, I find a lot of joy in that.
Yes. Yeah. Your work, there's not a whole lot we can find online so that people can see it. But what comes to mind is Luke's book, which we've talked to Luke. We haven't talked to him about writing yet, but he has a book that people can find online and see your style. Of course, the symbol, a lot of the promotional stuff I use for the podcast is all you. What's your favorite style? Because I've seen you do a lot of things, a lot of different styles of art. But what's your favorites?
I think I always come back to the ink work, just like working with a pen and just black and white. I guess I don't quite know why that is what I enjoy, but there's something about like the contrast you can get with just black and white and with stippling and hatching, and what you can create with really such a simple tool and have great masterpieces out of it, and that is the only piece I've ever had in an art show was with that type of medium. So I think, one, I really like how it looks, but also it's really easy to just sit down, not have to get a whole lot out, just have a pen and some paper, and I can do something with that feels fulfilling to me.
Yeah. Minimal supplies.
Yeah.
But speaking of supplies, what paper do you use? What kind of pens do you use?
I like the Macron pens. Those are some of my favorites.
I think something sitting over there, but
yeah, we've got tons sitting around this house.
Just sitting around
all over. I'm not really particular on the paper I use. Most often I use watercolor paper, but that's just because that's what I have easily accessible. Mm-hmm. Because I do like to watercolor, so it's just easy to just stick with watercolor. And then if I want to add that to a piece, I easily can.
Yeah. With the ink and the pens, there's a lot of light play. Mm-hmm. Like with the stippling or with shading or whatever you're drawing, there's always a lot of, where's the light coming from? This is a question from someone who wants to understand how the heck to do light. Do you squint at your piece to figure out? Do you blur your eyes? Do you just have a gift to be able to see where light is coming from? Is it just training? I find myself when I'm doing watercolors, especially, I'm trying to blob that color in there. I'm looking at things with my eyes so squinted. I'm tempted to take a contact out so that I can have that. Like,
Have it
I
be
need a
blurry.
sharp and I need a real blobby one, because that's the only way you have such a, I guess, trained eye to be able to look at things and say this is where the light comes from. What's your process for looking in at something like that? I know this is kind of like a specific question, but
What are you guys doing here?
we're just recording, dude.
Oh, we want somebody come down with us.
I'll be down in a few minutes, okay?
Okay.
Okay. This episode has been brought to you by a 4-year-old and a 1.5-year-old who can't go without their mom for longer than 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's why we do this.
Yeah.
That's why we look at other people's hobbies, because they're easier than trying to get into our own. It's a very self-contained episode.
Yes, absolutely.
But when you're drawing light,
Yeah.
what's the process? How do you get in there?
Well, I feel like it did take some practice. And for me, I still to this day struggle with the idea of working from light to dark. In my mind, naturally, I try to do the opposite. And there are some mediums where that makes sense, but not necessarily with watercolor, and not necessarily with using the ink. So over time, I've just kind of learned how to be mindful of that during the process. And just to this day, I still don't get it right, because that is really what can make or break a piece you're working on.
Right.
But sometimes I just make other parts darker if I have to and hope for the best.
Yeah. Just keep shading it until it works out. What did you start out drawing? Is there something that really getting into art forms and different styles, what was your go-to?
When I was younger, maybe preteens to early teens, I was inspired a lot by music. So if there was ever a song that I really resonated with and it put an image in my head, that's what I would try to draw. And I didn't have a lot of access to things at the time, so it was mostly just graphite pencils that I would use to try and draw that. Mm-hmm. Maybe color pencils too. Yeah, and then in art classes in elementary school or middle school or whatever, they try and give you that variety and those rules and guidelines. And if there was anything I could do now to get into my hobby more, just because I do have such limited time. Right. And limited capacity to some degree to be that creative right now, I would absolutely do an art class where there's a little bit more instruction in what I'm doing in that moment, what I'm creating, what I'm drawing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What inspires you now as a busy mom in art?
I think right now I'm most inspired when I can get outside. And that's what I've been trying to do more recently. We have the ladybugs all over our backyard in all of the different life stages. And I've never been fully aware of the life stage of a ladybug until now. And so I've been very, very inspired by just the different stages and what they look like at those stages, because it's kind of alien-like. It's definitely not as beautiful as a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. And I've been enjoying just seeing what they choose to, metamorphosize on, or
to
change
where they do it.
Right. And it's always on a beautiful plant, and then I get inspiration from that plant as well. Mm-hmm. So that's been fun to just walk around our garden and just see something that I think is beautiful and see how quickly I can draw it. Yeah,
just sitting down for you only have 30 minutes. Having at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got about 2 minutes before the mosquitoes come after me. So.
Yes, yeah. We're not drawing mosquitoes.
Yeah.
That is not part of God's beauty.
No.
Don't know what's going on there. But nature, you've seen plenty of my trees. I just love trees. I think because they're easy and they don't move.
I think that's so funny because I intentionally try to not paint or draw trees.
lot
That
going
seems
on
so
there.
daunting to me.
That's funny.
And you make these great trees, and I'm like, wow.
I just love trees. Good things. But yeah, that's when somebody's getting into, like, you have your basket right next to you, and it's got pencils, paper, obviously, your watercolor. How long has it taken you to curate this amount of stuff?
Honestly, I think it'd be really easy to curate a whole bunch of art supplies.
Yeah.
Because it's so tempting, especially if you were to watch like a YouTube video or something.
Yeah.
But the majority of what I have was guided through like the classes I took in college.
Yeah.
And they've lasted me this long. And so that's like the cool thing about art is you can buy art supplies that will last you a long time if you use them appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
Or you create infrequently.
Yeah.
Like I do right now.
Yeah.
But I have chosen to invest in some of the more expensive products, like the color pencil brand that I use, or even the watercolors, because they do make that little bit of a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm finding I do like my artwork a little bit more if I use the right tools.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And it's all just kind of to taste, right? Like if you, I don't use a straight edge ever because I think it just looks, silly. But there's plenty of people that use straight edges, and you need to use them for perspective or for, I don't try not to draw buildings very often, but yeah, that's just depends on what you want to use. And we watch people on YouTube like Danny, is that what?
Oh yeah, from Sketchbook School.
Sketchbook School and Scott Sava, of course, we watch it, and their studios are just loaded with things that they bought. Scott always talks about, I bought this years ago, and it's still just hanging out in a drawer, and it's still good.
Yeah,
It still works, know. And they just, you have your go-to things, but it's also like using new things. How do you pick out something new to try out?
How do I pick out something new? Well, I honestly, like I said, I think it's easy to try the new things. It's so easy to go to Meiningers or Hobby Lobby, and there's this new pen that I need this specific color for or whatever.
Right.
I think it's much harder to be really intentional about what you're getting and being creative about finding alternatives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But when I do get the chance to try new things, I'm definitely researching it a lot first. And so it might start off as a bit of a like sales move of some YouTuber or influencer trying to buy me or trying to have me purchase some art product.
Right.
And then digging in, seeing if it's actually going to work for me.
Yeah.
And if I want it. Because I am sure someday I will have a studio full of art supplies and crafts and all of that. But I am trying really hard to be mindful about using those things in their entirety. And not that I have to be a master in whatever that art form or art medium is, but at least being comfortable enough to use it before expanding upon that skill as well or buying more of that.
Yeah. I think, speaking of art mediums, you have a lot of different mediums. I think I said at the beginning. You make your own books that you draw in, and we've done that together for a while now. That's another part of our art journey, which I love being able to step alongside you in that. But what does finding new art styles to you, how does that encourage you as an artist?
I think it's fun to just add it to like your artist resume per se. It's so fun to, when I get the chance to talk about it, to be like, oh, I love making stamps. And the stamps are so versatile in and of themselves. I've made, marketing materials with the stamps I've made. I've done a school project with it that was outside of the realm of an art class. I can put them on t-shirts and make my own shirts. But also I like to say, oh yeah, I can do watercolor. I can do, using color pencils proficiently in drawing, it's fun and encouraging to move on to the next thing once you start building up those skills in different art mediums that you can work with.
Mm-hmm.
And they all eventually end up coming together. Like you talked about making books. Like now that I know how to make a book, I can make a specific stamp for the cover of the book.
Yeah.
Or I could even make a stamp for the little name tag or a little logo that every time we made a book, we could stamp it with that. Or I also enjoy textile dyeing, which I've done before with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of maybe weaving my own book cover and dyeing it in certain natural colors, using that as a cover of a book. It's fun to see how you can gain these different skills that can all go together and make one beautiful art piece.
Yeah.
And of course, you have to start somewhere and start small and build on those skills. But once you have like that moment where you can really look at something and say, I made almost all of this.
Right. Right.
It's super fun.
Yeah.
I do want to say one thing that's been fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like this is something I don't get to do often just because, like I've shared several times, our time is very finite right now.
Yeah.
So I don't even get a lot of time to even sit down and discuss my hobbies.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
thinking about artistic styles and different mediums and just talking about that with you made me realize there are so many things within that I've learned how to do and I enjoy doing.
Right.
Like the paper making, weaving, learning to crochet.
Yeah.
Yeah, watercolor, acrylics, color pencil, the ink pens.
Mm-hmm. It's just about keeping your hands busy while creating something, you know?
Yeah.
There's always different ways to keep your hands busy. But speaking of your hands, this was a question I want to ask. You do nail art too, which has been so fun to watch you do. At Christmas, I got you, like, you upgraded your light and all sorts of different tools and stuff to be able to polish up your nails and get the old stuff off. And now, like, once every couple of weeks, you're wearing your art. And even watching you take that on as a creative endeavor, you just go buck wild with it. And you do all sorts of crazy stuff. That's just, I mean, wearable art, of course. You know, you've done tattoos and nails and all sorts of different stuff. What's it like being able to just, like, know that people have their art on them? You're wearing your art right now. You were even designing tattoos yesterday, and you get so excited about that stuff. I just love watching your excitement about it. But what is that? Is it flattering for people to be like, can you design a tattoo? Can you know?
Oh, it's absolutely flattering. It's interesting the amount of people who have approached me asking me to create something. Because in my little world, in my little bubble, like, I'm not a fantastic artist. But that probably just goes back to the self-comparison thing I've struggled with as a younger child. But, like, the people who have come to me, like, I want you to draw this for me. Like, our sister-in-law, for example.
Yeah.
That was someone I was not expecting to ask me to design a tattoo for them. Or with Luke and him asking me to be the illustrator for his books.
Mm-hmm.
I was so flattered by that.
Yeah.
Because out of all the people we know who are probably also very talented artists, you ask me. And that is so fulfilling.
Yeah.
And I'm also the type of person who is, like, extrinsically motivated. So it really helps me to have some of that external pressure of, hey, I need this book done, or I want it to look a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
That I can really sit down and get stuff done when somebody else is asking me to do it.
Right. Yeah. And expecting a result.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and you got to remember, too, that when people are asking you to design things, it's because we are terrible at it, you know? Yeah. I could have designed the Old Dog New Tricks, like the cover art and everything. It would have looked so silly. You would have been like, you can't sell that. You're not going to have a good time with that on Instagram. Like, I love using your stuff because it's things I'm also proud of. Like, of course, you get the input of the person who wants something, and you're like, can you know, what do you, does it look okay? Is the colors right? Whatever. And I'm just trusting you. I'm like, you're the in charge here. You're the boss. You know, it's going on my social media, but I don't know anything about it. So you really do have a specific eye, and I think you are so welcoming about it too. You're never like, well, this is the best art you're ever going to get. You're like, you're just flattered by it, and that's incredible, and humble, of course. You're always very humble about it. It's incredible to watch, and it's been incredible to watch while we've been married. You taking steps to always be creative. What are you working on next? What you got anything in the way? What are we gonna do now?
Well, actually, so they're doing an art show with my work.
Oh, that's right.
And I would like to create a piece to have them show and
Right.
possibly sell, because then the money just goes back towards the organization I work for, which I feel is a good one.
Yeah.
So I would love to think about making a piece there and going back to the whole butterflies, but also the ladybugs.
Ladybugs, yeah.
And their lifestyle.
That's fun.
I think I want to do something around that.
Yeah.
Because I think the theme is your story or something like that.
Yeah.
And it made me think that if I drew a picture or painted a picture of the ladybug in its stage before it is seen as the red little beautiful ladybug.
Right. Yeah.
And it's really in that weird alien stage that is kind of my story. Like, I feel like I'm very much still in that stage, and you don't ever quite see yourself in that final stage.
Yeah.
You're always going to feel like you're at some form of metamorphosis, becoming something else.
There's always a lot of change happening.
Yeah.
You taught me, and I use this a lot. In fact, I probably have used it in the podcast descriptions. Maybe not, but I should start. You talk about turning your waiting room into a classroom, and that the ladybug metamorphosis is really part of that. You're never quite at the final stage because we are waiting. Where did you get that, first of all, and what does that mean to you?
I got it from a lady named Jess, who is a YouTuber. She has like a little homestead.
Roots and Refuge.
Roots and Refuge, yep. And it has always hit me really hard, especially like right now, that there are so many things that I know we're working towards, and it's not always easy. And so just telling myself, like, I'm in my waiting room and I can turn this into a classroom. And if there's a skill I want to have, now's the time to work on it.
Yeah.
Even though it's not always easy to do that.
Yeah.
There's always some space that I can learn. And a lot of times for me, when I'm feeling that creative impulse, like I really want to create something, but maybe I just can't in that moment. Those are the times where I'm like, okay, but I can learn something new. So I'll turn on a YouTube video or I'll turn on a podcast.
Yeah.
And I'll explore different mediums within that way and learn about them.
Mm-hmm.
And because then I do feel more competent when the time comes that I can sit down and explore that.
Yeah. Yes. And I feel like every stage of life you're in a waiting room.
Mm-hmm.
You're always waiting for something. But us, especially together, you've been such an encouragement to me. Even just starting this podcast was just like, I got a lot going on, but I always want to learn more. Mm-hmm. And I always want to explore more. And this is just a great way of doing it and to feel encouraged by it. And I want to thank you for encouraging me in that, both as we're sitting next to each other in the waiting room, theoretically, and being part of the learning. Because you teach me things every day about art and about myself and helping me along this journey. You've been a blessing.
Thanks, honey.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of want to extend that back to you a little bit, because that was one thing I was pondering about when thinking about hobbies and knowing I was going to talk to you about art, is there are going to be times where you need to surround yourself with people who will allow you to do that, who appreciate the hobby that you have and the passions that you have and support those. And so for all of the times where you've let me just go have 30 minutes in the garden, and I'm sure the boys are in here making a mess or crying or spilling a glass of milk for the 10th time that day, you've really supported me in taking those moments for myself. And then I think you can see how relieving it can be for me when I come back in and I have a smile on my face and I'm excited to show you something new.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, that has been a big part in this whole journey.
Yeah.
Is that you have also let me have my waiting room become a classroom and not just a waiting room where you don't have your phone and you're staring at the wall and there's some sick person in the corner you're trying to stay away from.
Yeah. It's coughing.
It's a little miserable.
Well, I think that's an important part of at least in our relationship, having a healthy marriage is giving each other the time that we need to do what we need to do to feel fulfilled, feel creatively charged. Especially you and I are very creatively charged people, and we've learned to balance that. And I encourage anybody who's, feeling like they're in the doldrums to find an art style that works for them. I'm not very good at drawing, but boy, do I love to play music. And that always just releases me for 20, 30 minutes, and make time for those you love to be able to do the same thing. It's very important.
I've always wanted to host like an art night. And we've yet to do so, but I think it would be so fun to just invite all of our friends over, and they don't even have to be doing a specific kind of artwork. Just if you're working on a project that day,
come put it on the table.
Yeah, write your poem.
I think I've learned a lot in school too, which is so strange to say at 30 years old. I've just now learned this, but it's being able to put your art out and saying, "I need feedback. What's the feedback on this?" Because people they're not going to be mean. They're not going to be like, "Man, that sucks." You're not going to put your art on the table and be like, "You guys can trash this,"
Yeah.
But putting your art out is scary. Putting a podcast out is scary. Putting my voice on the record is scary. Because there's going to be somebody who's going to be like, "This is garbage." But I think that's you creating a safe space for that is incredible. To be able to come bring if you're working on something, put it down on the table and work on it.
We'll get inspired from everyone else too.
Oh, it's always wonderful.
Yeah. Collaborate together and really cherish that time together and see what you can present at the end.
Yeah.
I think one of the best birthday parties or girls' nights I went to was we put different words in a bowl, and we picked out 3, and we all had to draw something based off those 3 words. So it was like worm, glasses, and boots.
Oh yeah. I thought he was in here, but maybe he's not.
I think he got destroyed.
Oh,
but
it was so cool.
It was fun to see all the different interpretations people got from those 3 words.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the different talents people had within that room.
Yeah. Yes.
Because even, let's say, they weren't the best painter, or they didn't have the best painting per se. They were absolutely the most fun personality in that room. And making the most jokes and having the best conversations with people.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes you don't realize that till you're all at a table creating together.
Yeah. It really brings people together.
Yeah.
But we'll have to have an art night. I'll sponsor it. We got 15 subscribers now, so.
Oh, perfect.
We might have some money rolling in.
You could probably invite all those 15 subscribers to the art night.
They'd love it.
Yeah.
They'd love it. Yeah. Well, if you're listening, come on over. We'll have an art night.
It'll be fun.
Be a good time. Sign up in the comments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For those out of state, we'll do virtual too. We can
yeah. We'll Skype you in.
Yeah.
Do you have any final thoughts or anything I missed or anything you want to plug? I know you're not really online, so.
Yeah. No, I like how you brought up the turning your waiting room into a classroom. And so I think that's the only thing I'd want to plug is if you feel like you're in a stage where you're stuck and you're working towards the next thing and you don't know when it's coming. So that's the hardest place to be. Just start somewhere and take that little step and do it one little step at a time. Because you're going to feel so much better once that door opens and now you have more skills to be prepared for that moment.
Absolutely.
And that relates to hobbies, but just life in general.
It relates to everything. We're just using hobbies as a focus point, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning a lot about life through hobbies.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
I say it every time. I get excited at the end of every recording, and I want to go do that thing that I'm talking about. But really, I mean, as long as you're doing what you love, you're living life right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, thank you for sitting down with me, taking the time out of our day.
Of course.
Thank you for listening. This has been Old Dog New Tricks, and this was Aliea talking about art. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye.
Bye.